Heads up, female leaders, executives, founders. The 2025 Renegade Accelerator is now open. You can head to renegadeaccelerator.com. Check it out. We'd love to have you.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now Show.
Today we have Dr. Brooke Weinstein on the podcast. I'm so excited. She's a renegade. She is a neuroscience expert, and she happens to live on my street, so it's super handy. Brooke shares a why not now idea like really no other. It's incredibly moving, incredibly brave, and what you're about to hear is something that pretty much brought me to tears. So she's been so gracious to share her story, but also the lessons and some of the tips and the tactics of how to move through various situations, not only grief, but just stressful situations. And we're all going through them, right? So without further ado, here is my friend, fellow renegade, Dr. Brooke. Brooke, welcome to the Why Not Now show. I'm so excited for you to be here.
Thank you for having me.
All the way from down the street.
Yes, down the street. I usually, will get slightly dressed up if I'm doing an in-person podcast, but it was just my natural flow to be like, it's Amy Jo's house.
And we might start dancing at any moment, right? In fact, I think I'm going to have to we got to get much more comfortable in these chairs. Yeah. So I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and there's so much for us to discuss, but let's hop right in the spirit of Why Not Now. Can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make, a moment, and you had to ask yourself, why not now? Mm-hmm. We'll dissect that day, minute, hour, and reverse engineer and kind of play by play, figure out how you navigated the bridge from idea to action.
So I've been thinking a lot about my why not now. And while I think I could go back and explain everything up into that moment, I think the more important piece is the actual moment. And that is when I had 2 children, a husband, and I felt like I was completely drowning in motherhood and honestly just in life. And I never thought I'd be at that place in my life. I was 1,000% at the bottom of the totem pole. I was not only taking care of my children, but I was taking care of my very depressed husband. And my children used to nap every day. And I was always taking that time for me. And usually it was laying down, scrolling my phone, basically silence, right? Jonathan would usually lay down too. And I finally decided that in order for me to not drown, I needed to do something about it for myself. And I got up and I decided from that point on that during my children's nap, I was going to move and start doing things for myself and take that time for me. And I started walking, and what started out as a 3-month summer challenge to myself of 1,500 steps for 3 months turned into
1,500.
Mm-hmm, yeah. 1,500.
Now I know.
No, 15,000.
Yeah, I was like, maybe
1,500 is like around the house,
maybe
like that. Yeah,
2 napping from nap. Like, I didn't want to override there, but
thank you.
I know you, and I think there's an extra zero.
Yes. So 15,000 steps, and what once turned into a commitment to myself changed the trajectory of my entire life, and in multiple ways we will get into, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it was the catalyst for me to not put myself first in a sense of always being selfish. And, I use that word a lot, even with my clients, of like, be selfish. And I use that harsh word because I think that so many people steer away from that word, and it feels so ego, almost, that word selfish, right? But I think you need to be able to hear that word in order to like give yourself permission to even do a sliver of a thing. Like hear the harsh word to be like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll just do this. So it allowed me to start drudging through the mud and climbing up the totem pole and not having to be at the top, but deciding that I matter enough to be in the mix. And it came with a lot of change in my life and a lot of shifts and a lot of success, a lot of trauma, a lot of...
Yeah.
Oh, it's been a wild ride to get to where I am today.
Well, and I had goosebumps when you were talking about the moment and deciding to get up and walk, and tears, because, or at least watery eyes, because I know what happened after that. And, you know, we talk about why not now moments, and it may be why not now stop doing something little, it may be doing something big, but the gravity of a moment, if you decide, it really can change your entire life. And so I'd love for you to share what happened next, because it really, that was the spark.
I think the real truth behind the gravity of the moment is completely different than what I just shared. And the gravity of the moment is, am I going to choose myself and my children, or am I going to choose my husband?
Yep.
And I knew it had to be one or the other, and it could only be one or the other, because choosing Jonathan was enough. Like, it was a full-time caretaking position.
And it wasn't working, was it?
And it wasn't working, and I had done it for over 10 years.
And I know your life story, but this was not the first time you chose other people in your life, right?
Oh,
it was
1,000%.
always choosing to help where you
Yeah.
went to college, where you lived, always everybody else, even from a young age. So I recently heard, I think it was Elizabeth Gilbert, say, no one is safe around me if I'm not taking care of myself. And I was like, that's a great way to explain the selfishness.
Totally.
It's really selfless. But okay, please share what happened after you got up from that non-nap and moved.
So many things happened. I started taking care of myself. I started building a business for myself. I started telling myself that Jonathan was a big boy, and that in order for me to take care of my children and myself, he needed to learn how to take care of himself. And eventually, Jonathan and I separated, and I feared being the one to start that journey, because Jonathan was so depressed that I feared for his life. And I knew that if I was the one that decided this, that's why that moment is so monumental. Like, if I decided this, then it was as if I was choosing one life over another. It was deciding of whether he was going to sink or swim, or it was deciding if we did separate, or we're no longer together, then would he make it? And we did ultimately separate. And I mean, fast forward a year and some change, and Jonathan did take his own life.
So you've been extremely, forthcoming as after processing and just sharing with your own audience about your journey, and which I have so much respect for, in such a way that's not, this open wound that you're trying to share out loud, but just truly helpful insight. And what's one of the, as it's been 3.5 years now since that point, and it's unimaginable, like that grief, that trauma for people who haven't been through that. But it's a different day for you. And I only know you on this side of it, which is really interesting. But given what you do and how tragic and just unimaginable that process was for you and your kids, what are some of the things that shine the most in terms of how you've been able to grow or what you've learned?
I think that I was extremely blessed to be able to do what I do prior to moving through a trauma like this.
Which is, if you don't mind sharing just a little bit about that too.
So if you don't know who I am or what I do, I teach, at the end of the day, what I do is I teach humans how to regulate their nervous system through sensory and emotional regulation. And at the core of it, and I believe it more than ever before, at the core of it is your mental health. And I think that everyone believes and knows and trusts the idea of psychology at the moment. I think that these buzzwords like dysregulation, regulation, nervous system, somatics, like all these things that are kind of buzzing up, they're finally coming to the surface. And I think that if individuals understood that your nervous system is the root of your mental health, a lot more individuals would be healthier. Mm-hmm.
It is. It's interesting how, of course, different things become more mainstream and they finally arrive. But I was thinking about this the other day because, ironically, in the same day, Cheryl Strayed and Elizabeth Gilbert kind of crossed my path somewhere, probably online. And I've studied and read their books and like all the things. And they both were talking about how their big bodies of work, actually they're so well beyond that now. And they look at themselves as like, it's not that they weren't an expert in their own story, but it's we tend to follow the romantic stories and the, whatever's happening next type thing. And that's not science necessarily, but that's what I think is so different about this is now both, I'd say Cheryl and Elizabeth are kind of like, yeah, I didn't really know a lot of things when I did that, but we as, especially women, want to flock and listen and think, okay, this is it. This is the way I do this now.
Yes.
When actually we don't learn from ourselves and trust ourselves.
Yes.
We're looking for all of those protocol, the answer. And so how do you connect trusting yourself with your nervous system and like, what are some of the things that you could share with us?
I think I love what you just said because I did have a heck of an idea what I was doing when Jonathan passed. I did not have any idea what I was doing when I created and built the method that I've built. I started out as a doctor of occupational therapy in pediatrics, and I worked with kids for over a decade, and I knew that my treatment wasn't working, and I knew how to be an OT, and I knew how to be a mom, but I didn't know how to do both. And it's so different when you just bring a child in for an hour a week versus helping support a human brain 24/7, which is what we do with our clients. And so I was like patient X. Like I was number one. I was the hypothesis. I was all of that. And through trial and error, I figured out what did work and what didn't work in order to start collecting data within your own nervous system and really truly listen in to yourself. And I think the craziest thing is that individuals who are trying to mask who they are or keep performing or reach the next level of their career, like whatever their high achieving goals are that are also exhausting them at the same time. And sometimes it may not be the truth of who they are and they're pushing that person away and they're ignoring that person. Sensory and emotional regulation forces you in the most beautiful way to finally be the most authentic version of yourself because you're no longer ignoring the signs of your dashboard, in the car of like, hey, engine, like check engine, or like, hey, this is what's going on. And so I already knew that that was what was necessary, and I had to utilize those tools for the long road ahead of me when facing a trauma that I knew potentially could one day happen, but never truly thought it would. And I believe that everything happens in threes. You can regulate your nervous system in 3 minutes. You can regulate it in 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, and it depends on what you're trying to regulate through. So I like to say 3 minutes is like, I just snapped at my kids, right? Like, I just need a moment, like, okay, I can get back on track here. And you really can in about 3 minutes. 3 days is maybe some bad news or really disappointing something or other, right? 3 weeks is that transition from winter break back to school, or summer to back to fall school, right? It's 3 weeks to get back in the groove of the new schedule and lifestyle, like whatever it is. 3 months is like moving new schools or getting comfortable in a new home. 3 years, moving states, getting a divorce, and of course, going through trauma or losing a spouse or losing a parent or a grandparent or big things, big things like that. It really does truly take 3 years. And I knew that, and I was like, I'm gonna cheat this system. Like, I got this. Like, you just watch.
Total renegade. We go faster.
And I knew everything to do, and I did everything. But it still took me 3 years. And I'm proud of that journey of 3 years. And I'm proud that I got to, it's almost as if I got to witness it like a movie, because I'm so in touch with my internal state, and I'm so in touch with my nervous system and how to support myself, that I can easily look back and say, yep, year 1 was exactly what I thought it would be. Yep, year 2 was exactly what I thought it would be. Yep, year 3 was, I thought Stella was getting her groove back year 3. Like, I was like, I'm in. But it's really, I had to go through the whole 3-year cycle, and I would say year 4 has been, 3 to 4 has been Stella's getting her groove back.
Wow. It's like truly experiencing everything you knew and had learned. And like, it's talk about experiential application of, gosh, what you were schooled in. And
Absolutely.
it's, if we go back to what you had talked about after you got up from the nap, right? And starting to do your own thing more and building your company and, you know, what happened and how you had to be strong for your children. But there's a theme along your life, within your life timeline of you've done a lot of things alone, right?
A lot, yes.
Yeah. And so those moments when you are packing boxes or you are alone, you know, trying to grow your new business, knowing you are now the sole provider, and you're not regulated, right? Or you're just as low as it gets. What are some of the things that you did or you would advise people to do?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. I think so often we think, well, wow, they're so strong, or they're so brave, or they're so resilient, or wow, they did that, right? And if anyone in my position was sitting here, they'd say, what other choice did I have? Like, I had no other choice, right? So at the end of the day, you don't have another choice, and you get through it and you make it work. But the worst thing you could do through that is taking your feelings and taking your emotions, putting them in a jar and placing them on the shelf and saying, well, I have kids and they need me. Or, well, I have a business and I'm building that. And not only do I have a business and I'm building that, but I also need to keep the lights on. And, well, there's so many things that you could just be like, nope, I'm not going to feel that today, and I'm going to push that away.
Get to it.
Yeah.
Like kicking the can.
Yeah, like,
It's
nope,
totally
we're good.
punting.
Like, nope, we're fine. I did the opposite. I leaned in as hard as I could. And I was like, today I feel sad, or today I feel angry. I mean, like, one time I screamed at the top of my lungs, like, I am so fucking angry. And my mom was actually there, and she was like, I don't think you're well. And I was like, no, actually, that felt really good. Like, I'm good now. I'm actually real well. But I felt it all. I allowed it all. And we repress so much. One of my favorite books is The Body Keeps Score. And it does. If you don't feel it, you will never heal it. And so I dove in and I allowed myself to just experience the experience of whatever came up with no shame, no guilt, no anything. I was just, okay, this is where we're at today, and I'm going to trust this. I'm going to trust exactly where I'm at today because clearly this is where I need to be. And there were days where I was in my bathroom, huddled on the floor in a ball, crying, and at the same time, I was like, you're supposed to be crying right now, and that's okay. So just keep going. Like, this is exactly what you need to be doing.
The Renegade Accelerator for 2025 is officially open for enrollment. What does that mean? Who is a renegade? These are female leaders, founders, executives that come from all walks of life. We're industry agnostic and we represent almost every vertical out there. What's really neat is we're able to exchange value exponentially because everybody has their own network, everybody has expertise. So we're a container of leverage and all fiercely focused on getting the most out of our time, money, health, so we can show up with the most impact both in our personal lives and in our professional worlds. The Renegade Accelerator revolves around curriculum, collaboration, accountability. We all have our why not now ideas, both personally and professionally. You bring those in, we work on them together, fiercely focused, taking action. And when you graduate from the Renegade Accelerator, you're automatically in the Renegade Collective for the rest of the year. And you can continue on beyond that too. You will learn about investing, have opportunities to actually invest. You'll learn about personal branding, public speaking, how to get on boards, podcasting, publishing, all the different ways to distribute your thought leadership. But most of all, you'll be able to truly connect with other women who are leveling up just like you are. This really is the career love of my life. You'll get to learn everything I've learned over the last 20 years. We do have limited seats. To apply, head to renegadeaccelerator.com. I want to mention something to the listeners right now too, as you're hearing all, Brooke's story. This was so complex, not only the situation, but the trauma. And if anybody has been through something like that or feel that they're in a situation, Brooke has so much information. She's shared so much more that we won't be able to get to necessarily today, but especially with children. And you've been really forthcoming to help others in a variety of ways. So I just want to bookmark that. So if we can only talk about so much in this moment, but there's a lot to this because you are also separated with Jonathan, right? So you have a whole nother family, you have feelings and potential, guilt or projected guilt or whatever. And so we're talking, there's some layers here.
Chapters.
There's a few layers.
There's a few chapters.
But you have your black belt in most of them having walked the walk you have. So as you look at, regulation and processing, we both attended the Renegade Summit, of course, and our fellow Renegades, Stephanie Hauser, shared her documentary of being in the NICU. She was our BFF. My son was in the NICU with her son. She was in longer. Lincoln was in for 3 months, right? And Stephanie's story is just absolutely incredible. But when we were watching this debut of her documentary, I think I processed or realized another layer of grief that maybe I hadn't even recognized. And I remember talking to Richard, I'm pointing here because he's literally right here producing the show, and just being like, I just remember feeling this gravity of, this makes sense now why I've felt this way the last couple of years. Or it can get stuck, or it can get, I don't know. I feel like I slowed it down a little bit by speeding up at times.
Totally.
And still to this day, there are moments where I feel like I'm in that fight or flight. You know, didn't do any kind of maternity leave. The business just kept going. We moved,
Just kept going.
And so that's like a key thing as I'm listening to you. It might be 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road of something. But do the work, right?
Do the work. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And
the real
it's okay.
work.
Like it's never too late. It's never too late to do the work. Ever, ever, ever. And I mean, I was like a blubbering mess on that couch watching that documentary. And so was Lauren. But she was like, it's just pregnancy hormones. I'm like, what's my excuse? Like I was just, and I had preemies too. I had 2 preemies. And mine were only both in for 3 weeks, but it will stay inside of you.
There's no only when we talk about the NICU.
You're right.
I mean, it can
You're
be 3
right.
minutes and it's
You're
like,
right. You're so right. A day is a lifetime. An hour is a lifetime. But it's something that must eventually be worked out. And whether it comes naturally through like something in that video triggered something, right? Or we just listen in so much that we hear the triggers a lot greater or faster because we're tuning in more. It will come. It will happen. And I have had individuals who are years out but still not process some of the things that I have already processed through my grief. But that's because I allowed it. That's because I allowed myself to feel the feelings. And I don't know if I'd be where I am today if I didn't allow that experience.
It's, and by the way, Lauren Bongiorno just had her baby. So congrats, Lauren, her fellow renegade. Yeah, by the time this comes out, I think she just shared it publicly. But it's I think the grief situation, especially what's happened with Los Angeles and these fires and that collective grief. And back to Renegades, we have so many there that are dealing with it in different ways. And there's no playbook per se.
No.
But there's still you got to get through, right? But as we look at your journey, and if you could not fast forward because it should be honored, but the key points that happened,
Sure.
From finding out the news to today, if you were to touch on those top, those big milestones, what would you say they are?
Yeah. I would say there's so many milestones. There's so many like wins. I would say year 1 was, even though I tried to combat it and I was like, no, I got this. Year 1 was so much fight or flight, like so much fight or flight. Year 2, I think, is you're finally coming down off of fight or flight and the dust starts to settle in a very hard way because you're feeling all the things, or your body's bringing to the surface what it wasn't allowing you to feel or protecting you from feeling because you knew you couldn't go there yet. You could only manage and handle and feel what just enough, right? And year 3 allowed me to kind of see that I could do this. I think I didn't have any family that came to jump in and help. I didn't have much support except for my nanny who was already with us. And I would say one of the milestones is leaning in on her and seeing her husband step up for my boys was a really big one too. Really big one.
What's her first name? Are you able to? No, it's okay. No. Scratch that. I was just going to thank her, but not her full name.
We call her Lolo.
Lolo. Thank you, Lolo.
Thank you, Lolo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Lolo's been on my podcast
And then
before.
having a male figure.
Yes. There was no family. There was no friends that showed up for my boys. And oddly enough, one of my best friends in New Orleans, her husband passed about a year or so after Jonathan from cancer, and he's battled with it for many years. But I saw the flock, and we didn't have that flock. We never had that flock, and I think it's because of the circumstance and because of the way it happened and people not quite sure how to and who to support. And so I built my army. I built my support. I would say another milestone is honestly, like, one of the biggest milestones I'll never forget is laying on the floor with my youngest Eli and looking up. He used to have this little nightlight that would show like the constellations on the wall. And I walked out of his room that night and I was like, I gave him 2 minutes. I gave him 2 minutes. And that was something I will never forget, because there were days I couldn't. I was there, but especially in that first year, I had so many emotions and so much going on that they probably didn't even recognize that I wasn't like so fully present, but I held on to those 2 moments or 2 minutes because I knew if I had 2 minutes there, more are going to come. And I would say that those highlights continued on in a sense of different markers of definitely success with my business. I mean, my business in the last few years has just blossomed and boomed and very successful. And like I said, I didn't have a lot of help. I didn't have a lot of support. And so I would say my biggest milestone is knowing that I, at the end of the day, made all of this happen. And that's not like an ego, like, look at me. It's more of like, holy shit, I didn't really actually know what I'm capable of, but like I am. Like I can do it. And I would say another milestone is dating. Allowing someone into my life. I would say another milestone is actually when Lolo stopped working with us, which was just this school year. And it's a heartbreaking milestone, and she will always be an integral part of our life. She's family. But that means that I had enough capacity between my business and my personal life to be able to do it all. And I mean, in the beginning, I didn't even know like how to pay the mortgage. Like that was something Jonathan did, and he was still handling it. You know, like it was like all these things that I needed to take on, make sure the house insurance, but like it's just so much for one person to do. And then I would say another big milestone was being nominated for Austin Under 40. I just sat there with my mom and we were both in tears. I mean, I didn't care if I won. Like it's that for me, it's not about that. But I think it was just a night that I got to reflect and be like, holy shit, I really did do all this. Like, wow. And I'm finally okay. Like we're in a really good place.
Oh, I'm so proud of you and just...
Thank you.
So much respect. And you did it in a way that wasn't overdrive. You didn't, like with Lola graduating, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't, you've built this in a way that's allowed you to maintain your peace and your calm and your priorities.
And mental health.
Absolutely. You know, it wasn't burnout. So that
couldn't be, yeah.
That's incredibly unique, I think, because
I think especially for entrepreneurs, it's full steam ahead. Most entrepreneurs are what I like to call gas pedals. We're seekers. We enjoy the thrill. We enjoy the drive. It brightens us and lightens us. It's everything. It's amazing. And I help a lot of CEOs and entrepreneurs and high performance individuals learn how to step on the brake and slow down, because you can pattern your nervous system to stay there, right? And I wasn't willing to allow myself to be a victim of my circumstance, but I knew that I needed to do it in a trusting way that allowed me to continue being authentic to me.
Well, you've taken extreme intentional action, and it's kind of getting us now to your, we'll call it maybe for current why not now?
Yeah.
Which is so exciting. I think one of the, well, and how we met, first of all, this was just the way the world works, I swear. But you would think we met because we lived basically on the same street, but we didn't, right? It was years prior online and didn't even know necessarily that we lived on the same street. So I just have to thank social media every
I
once in a while.
know.
It's not
Absolutely.
as
It's not
terrible
always. Yes. I've made wonderful connections through social media.
Same.
Mm-hmm.
But as we've gone on our walks and we conquer the world and peacefully and sometimes dance, you know, you had mentioned one of the reasons for joining Renegade was focusing more on your story and amplifying it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Public speaking being potentially one route of distribution. Obviously, you have a book in you, many books. But I'm kind of that person that's constantly saying, are you sure? Are you sure you want to lean in more to speaking? You know, that means more travel.
Yes.
And you have very specific goals. And I love how clear you are. And you have boundaries in many ways about what you will and won't do with this business. I have so much respect for that and how it grows. But you do feel it's time to share more on stage, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think social media has been my main means of marketing, if you will, because prior to this, I had a brick and mortar for 6 years, and I had a business partner, and that clinic, I'm so proud of it, and it's still going, and sold that to her when I moved here. So I've done brick and mortar, but I knew after processing, the next step would be, I bet I could reach more people in a shorter amount of time if it was through the internet. And so I really utilized that. And I would say that I've conquered it. I would say that I'm good. Like I set out to be heard, and I've been heard.
Okay, if you're not following Brooke on, let's just start with Instagram. You need to be. You will learn about emotional regulation, and you might see her dancing in the same reel, but almost 1 million followers?
Yes.
And it's extremely valuable content. So you've done an amazing job your way.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a reach of over 80 million over all my channels, and never in my wildest dreams did I think that would happen, but I also felt deep down that it was something that I knew I could conquer and I knew I could do, and I did that. And I would say that we all feel the most comfortable in our own home, right? Like I always say, the person you are in your home and the walls of your home, right? 4 walls of your home. That's who you truly are, right? But I am talking to hundreds of thousands of people a day for whoever sees my content, right? But that's different than standing on a stage having 500 faces and eyeballs on you and you delivering the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it just feels like the next right step for me is a live audience rather than a virtual audience. Mm-hmm. And I, like you said, was very intentional, and I knew that I needed to wait till my kids and the business was in a certain place to where I could step away from the business to go travel and do the thing. And I also knew that I needed to be able to make sure that my children were old enough and that maybe I could do it so intentionally that they get to come and see what mom does and watch and learn and build dreams of their own.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I want to be able to help individuals understand mental health on a neurological level, as well as, of course, share my story and do it in front of people rather than a screen.
Well, and let's talk about that. I want to double click into a lot of things you just said, because your story is much bigger than everything,
Yes.
Your story is full of incredible lessons and, things people can gain value from and benefit from. But you also have mentioned how much you're craving that energy exchange. So I think honoring that too, that, it can be extremely lonely as content creators who are behind a screen and cameras by themselves in their similar homes usually or studios. And so that you deserve that feeling.
I want the energy back.
You do. And it is a very live, different ball game. But you've trained in a lot of ways that you'll just be incredible because you know your content inside and out. You know how to deliver it. You know how to connect. So I'm so excited for this.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, we talk a lot about live audiences, and I'm a marketer, so I'm going to kind of usually lean that way. But when you look at a loyalty ladder, right, of a customer, fan, client, whatever, it's the ultimate because you're there in person.
Yeah.
And you get to feel it and connect and talk about it. And you'll never forget it when someone moves you and motivates you and sees you. And so it's like a really cool, but I'm excited for you to feel that.
Yeah. I'm not Britney Spears here, so it's not like if I walk out on the sidewalk, everyone's going to be like, oh my God, there's Britney Spears. But every now and then someone will stop me and say, oh my gosh, are you Brooke? And it means so much because I can put a face with a number, right? Of like, I used to literally Google states to be like, okay, how many people live here? Okay, like Austin's about 900,000, and like, okay, like got it. Like, wow, like I have all of Austin. Like that's the equivalency, and to try and like grasp
but
it,
it's like
but you
out
can't
there, right?
unless the energy is within the room, and I'm ready for that.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I'm excited as we're building out what that looks like, and going through that journey is always fun. It feels like a snow globe that you're shaking up at first. There's so much. It's like, how do you get it down to this in the most potent, valuable distribution and way of saying something? And it's like such a fun, creative task. But at the end of the day, it's story, right?
Yeah.
So kind of coming back, I just realized too, it wasn't Cheryl Strayed. It's Glennon Doyle and Elizabeth Gilbert, and looking at their big books, right? Untamed and Eat, Love, Pray.
Yes.
Those are the two I was referring to. Of
Glennon Doyle's a big one.
We can't outsource. And now she's like had this, new transformation too. And we have to remember that nobody has all those answers.
Yeah.
We can learn through their story.
Yes.
And yes, certain people have science to back it. Like trusting that you're on your own journey and not outsourcing yourself to someone else's, I think is something that even I've done. It's like, where's my eat, pray, love? No, you really have to listen.
Yeah.
And regulate yourself.
Yeah, and I think some people ask, well, how are you going to teach me this? Or what is this going to look like? Or how do I do this for myself? And it looks differently for everyone, but going all the way back to that moment of me getting out of bed and starting to walk, and I said truly that moment meant choosing me over another human. And that can seem so selfish and so wild that you are choosing knowing that potentially someone else could no longer be here. And that is why once I started doing that work, that was literally the catalyst for me to find, and it built my method. Like that was the catalyst. And I couldn't be wrong. I like there was too much for me to lose, right? If I was wrong and I just did it and then Jonathan ended up taking his own life, well then I did it for nothing, right? So I was determined to figure out what's the secret sauce? Like what is the thing and how can it work? Because I couldn't do it other than knowing that it would work and that it would be worth it.
And the stakes were just too high.
Too high. Way too high.
And you have the experience helping others, right? There's very different things there, I think, in terms of kind of falling into someone's maybe journey through a book versus, some more critical practitioner backed with expertise. So I'd love to just take you through a quick Renegade Red Hot Seat journey.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
You are in a red hot seat.
I am.
Pirates or ninjas? Who's tougher? Why?
Oh. Pirates or ninjas?
Brooke.
Pirates.
Oh, okay. I'm team pirate too.
You're team pirate?
Yeah.
Why?
I lived on a boat.
I want to know. Oh, because you lived on a boat. That's why.
I mean,
Got it.
I feel like I'd be cheating on them if I...
Okay, so my true answer is pirates, because when I think of ninjas, I think of Ninja Turtles, and like I don't really know.
And you're just not into wanting to be
I don't
a
know
ninja
about that.
turtle.
So
Yeah,
that's
All
the
right.
truth. Yeah.
Okay. When I say the word renegade, who comes to mind?
You.
Well, that was not a loaded question, I promise, everyone. Who else comes to mind? You come to mind for me.
That's so funny. I would say Stephanie, Lauren. I mean, there's just so many. And there's been so many who have been on this journey prior to me, right, as well, that I may not know that well, that I'm like, oh, you go, girl. Like, there's just so many. Yes.
Oh, well, we are a merry band of renegades.
Yes.
But as you go to bed at night, is there anything that consistently keeps you up?
No.
Okay.
I would say I wanted to be able to go to sleep at night knowing I'm doing enough. And I think at the end of the day, most parents would like to go to sleep knowing that they're doing a good job. I think a lot of that keeps them up. And I wanted to be able to just be able to remind myself you're doing enough.
I think that's probably got to be your biggest KPI through all this, that you have been able to create that for yourself.
I had to trust the process. Like it was like a release, or like waving the white flag of like, today, those 2 minutes were enough.
Yeah. Think of the ripple effect of you having done that, though, like being able to go to sleep at night and not have that.
It was effort to get there.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Once I got there.
But like the ultimate
Sleeping like a baby.
KPI. When you're blasting the tunes in your car and rocking out and dancing, because I know you do, what song is playing?
Oh, there's just so many.
Or on top of your island in your kitchen.
Yeah.
Or wherever you
It
might
depends
see
on
Brooke.
the week, the month, but I would say Teddy Swims right now is my jam.
Okay. Awesome. I'm going to get the Renegade Dance crew started back up.
Oh, I'm in.
And anything recently you've read that you just like, you want to tell everybody? It could even be an article or a podcast. It doesn't
I
have
would
to be,
say the book that absolutely changed my life, and it's a very, very simple book. You could probably read it in an hour and a half, is called The Crossroads of Should and Must. And I think I even said it to someone at the Renegades. But I kept that book in my purse for months after I read it. And it was almost like I felt like it was my superpower of like just knowing I had that book by my side.
I love that. That's awesome. And to bring us home, if you were to go back and talk to Brooke before she laid down for that nap and say something to her,
Okay.
what would you say to her?
I would actually ask her a question. I would say, how do you feel? And I tried to get her to finally speak.
What would she have said back to you?
It depends on if she had the strength to be honest or not. I think old Brooke pushed down a lot and ignored a lot and just kept going. And that was burnout, right? Like that is when I got burnt out. That is when I was exhausted and depleted and dysregulated and all the things. And I think honest Brooke would have said, I'm tired and I'm really unhappy and I want different.
What a brilliant question. How do you feel? If we could just ask ourselves that more? Truly. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a renegade and doing the work and dance parties and all the things
My children know how to twerk because of me. Thank you very much.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
So that was very random to say, but just in case anyone
Renegades
wanted to
are
know.
random. It's about as
They're
random
very
as
good twerkers.
Great twerkers.
And every now and then they do it in Walmart too. So, and
I
HEB.
see an endorsement deal coming.
I mean, you know,
In fact,
they
let's just
should
go
be
shoot it
calling.
and send it to them and bill them.
Yeah. I mean,
You're going to hopefully see more of Brooke if I can get her, like, pull her down the street to come join us in the future. But thank you again. I just love you.
Thank you for having me.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?